Hi, I'm Narelle. About 7 years ago, I had 3 kids with special needs. 2 of them had significant disabilities and I had a newborn baby. I was working full time, I owned a gym, I was a single mum, and every day felt like a battle. I felt like I was in the 7th circle of hell on a good day. I was beyond exhausted physically and mentally. The children's dad didn't really want to take much responsibility, and it felt like I was really alone. So I lived that way for, I think, about 2 years, and I felt like I was in this pit of darkness. There was nothing that seemed to be bright on any given day, and my children felt it. I was a bad influence on them. I was miserable most of the time, and it was hard. I didn't know where I was going to draw strength from. I didn't understand why what was happening to me was happening. My children seemed to get sicker. They got new diagnoses quite frequently. My son had significant seizures every day, and I was just when I thought that I was going to get a break for the day when the kids had gone to school, the school would call me up and say that my son had a seizure and I needed to pick him up from the hospital, and it was tough. But there was one night that I remember in particular, and I was about 8 months pregnant with my baby girl, and my son was screaming from his room, and he was in excruciating pain in his joints. He'd been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 2 months beforehand, and he was in the midst of a juvenile idiopathic arthritis attack. He had 13 different joints locked up, and he was crying so much. And he said to me through his tears, "Mum, why does God hate me?" And I replied with tears in my eyes, "God doesn't hate you, sweetheart. He gives his hardest battles to his toughest soldiers." Now, I don't know where that came from. I don't know. I didn't have a plan that I was going to say. It was just something that came from my gut. And I said to him, "You're tough. We're going to get through this." And the poor thing, he was only 8 years old. And I think he looked at me like, "All right, Mum, I'll just go with what you say." And those words actually held a lot of truth for me too. And I started to realise that I'd been given what I could handle too. So I'm pleased to say that these years later that he doesn't have arthritis anymore. Of course, he still has type 1 diabetes, and we did get through that time. So it's true, we are only given what we can handle. During that time when I was going through, such a hard period in my life, a friend told me a hard truth. And she said, "This is all about your perspective, Narelle. Mindset is everything." And it really annoyed me that she said that. I couldn't believe that someone would take my problems and make them trivial, like my mindset, like I could somehow change all the things that were happening to me. That didn't seem right. But then over time, it hurt what she said, but it was true. So over time, I started to see what she meant. I started to look at things differently. I started to slowly, it didn't happen overnight, but slowly I started changing the way I saw the world. Slowly I started holding my challenges as badges of honour. Slowly I started to see that everything in my life had been given to me for a reason. So I started to ask the question, like, if not me, then who? Who else could cope what I've been given? 3 kids, a single mum, I've got a gym that was failing. These kids with disabilities. My baby, she had her own set of issues. There was certainly no one in my life that I knew that was as tough as me. And things started to change. And something that I realised that what you think, what you focus on, you attract. And I was focusing on all the bad things in my life and all these things that weren't fair and why me. What brought me here? Why did you do this to me? And I asked that question over and over. But while I was doing that, I was attracting more bad things. And that, once I realized that I was focusing on the wrong things, I started to change more and more, and I gathered speed. And instead of feeling miserable every day, waking up with dread, I started to actually think about what I could do instead, how I could use my mind, what I could do to honor my body, how I could actually turn this around and be something more than the miserable, unmotivated, depressed human that I'd become. And I started doing some things, and look, I'm not reinventing the wheel here, but by any means, but I'm going to give you all a reminder, because something that I think we forget about when we're in those states, when we're in that state of the world's against me, I can't cope, I'm not going to get through this, is we turn to things like alcohol, we turn to the TV, we turn to drugs sometimes, we turn to medication, we don't take care of ourselves, we don't exercise, we don't do the things that we have to do to be able to arm ourselves and give ourselves the best shot at being able to cope with what we've been given. So my top tips on what I did to help myself and turn my life around. And don't get me wrong, the problems are still there. The challenges are still there. I still have 3 kids with disabilities. I still have, my son still has seizures every single day. He has some form of seizure. Every few days he has a devastating seizure. My oldest son still got type 1 diabetes. My youngest daughter's just been diagnosed with a learning disability. Like, I still have those challenges, but now I have the tools to be able to lift myself out of those depths of depression that I spent so much of my days in. So my tips, my tools, my toolbox: exercise every day, even when you're tired. Just move your body. I have a spin bike and I got on that every day. I walked. If I couldn't get on the spin bike, I walked. And then I got a treadmill, and then I got some weights, because, in the current times that we're in now, it's hard to go to the gym. Mostly they're closed. So I did it at home. Stayed away from alcohol and drugs. I, at one point, found myself turning towards prescription drugs, but I decided that they were actually adding to my misery rather than helping me. Not against prescription drugs, but that's just my story. Alcohol certainly made things worse. Eating well. It's so important that you give your body the right nutrition to be able to cope with stress. Meditate. Although that sounds crazy, in a busy, busy life, we all need to make time to quieten our mind down and ground ourselves. And it's not about just having your mind full of nothing. I mean, if we had nothing in our mind, we'd be dead. So it's about actually training your mind and having the discipline to turn thoughts around, pivot in the thought, in the moment. So that really helped me a lot. Be kind to yourself. Know that you're going to make mistakes, that you're going to screw things up, and that's okay. We don't have to be perfect. I was exhausted trying to be perfect all the time. It's impossible. And lastly, you are stronger than you know. You can get through more things than you could ever possibly, imagine. So if you just start to every day take small steps to move in the right direction, you'll be able to turn your life around. You'll be able to change your mindset, and you'll be able to overcome the challenges that you have and be a stronger, better person because of them. Thank you.